Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Nilo and I'm a principal group product manager at Microsoft. Really excited to talk to all of you guys about how to build trust as a PM in today's session. Before we get started, quick disclaimer that the thoughts, ideas, perspectives in this presentation are all mine. These do not reflect any of the perspectives of my current or previous employers. So I wanted to get started by quickly sharing who I am and what have I done before, so you guys get a sense. So I've been working in tech roughly for about 18 years now. Started out as a tech consultant in the e-commerce space, then came to Microsoft here in 2006 in Seattle, where I started out as an engineer for the first few years in the Bing team. Was really fortunate to have worked with some of the most awesome PMs in my career during that time. And in some sense, they inspired me to make the jump to product management. I left Microsoft for a little while to work on a Paul Allen startup called Allen Institute for AI, where I launched this product called Semantic Scholar. We'll talk a little bit about that. It's a search engine for academic literature, highly differentiated by AI capabilities. And then I came back to Microsoft to work on the cloud infrastructure in 2016. And over the last 5 years, I've been driving a number of data center operations transformation initiatives to really make Microsoft DCs more reliable, efficient, secure, and safe. All right, so today's talk is going to have two parts. One is we'll first try to understand what is trust and why do you really care. And then in the second part, I'm going to share some really practical tips and frameworks with you guys, which I believe will help you a lot as you embark on your product management career. So what's trust? Trust is a firm belief in someone's reliability, truth, ability, or strength. It's a definition that I took from the dictionary, resonated very strongly with me. I didn't bother to change it. Trust, if you think about it, it's fundamental to everything that we do in the society, whether you are thinking about who to vote for during the presidential election, who to choose as your life partner, who to work for. Everything depends on trust. And the reason why I think that trust is the most essential capital for any product manager is because of the cross-functional nature of our role. As you see, I mean, we sit in the middle of all the disciplines: engineering, research, operations, sales, marketing, whatever you want to call it. And in that sense, the PM role is as much about people as it is about product. And fundamentally, we are responsible for delivering impact through influence without direct authority. So no trust equals no influence. So trust is incredibly, incredibly important. So then comes the question of what makes one person trust another, right? So there are really four factors that are responsible, that really drive trust: competence, empathy, authenticity, and consistency. Competence is really about, do I believe that you are knowledgeable and you have sound decision-making and judgment? Empathy is about, can you see the world from another person's perspectives? And for PMs, this is make or break. And we'll spend a lot of time with some concrete case study on this. Then comes authenticity. If you're building lasting relationships with people, then I want to experience the real you. Are you honest? Do you lead with transparency? And finally, consistency. Trust takes time to build. You cannot do something tomorrow and expect that you have built trust. It's consistency over time. So let's look at competence. What does this really mean? And there is a lot of materials, a lot of write-ups that has happened in the context of product management skills, competence, and so on. And they're all great. But when I think about some of the most important core attributes that are applicable regardless of your industry, the type of product, enterprise, consumer, everything, These 5 things really stand out to me. First is about understanding the big picture. Can you tie back what you and your team are working on with your company's overall vision, mission, objectives? And can you really articulate the whats and whys of your program in the context of that larger picture? That's extremely important. Then comes ownership. And to me, that's a mindset. The greatest PMs run their products like they would run their own startups, own companies, which means no task is above you, no task is below you. If an engineer is struggling to meet the timelines, you try to go and help out, saying that, hey, can I help you finish that other technical specification? If your designer is struggling for bandwidth, you try to go and help her and say that, hey, do you want me to take a stab at a low fidelity mockup here, and maybe you can review it. So that's what I mean by ownership. It also means owning your failures, sharing your successes, and really run like you would run your own business. Next comes having a point of view. The best PMs that I have experienced working with, they rally organizations and big teams on a point of view that is really well grounded by customer insights and data. And with that, they generate extremely high amounts of energy in the organization. Then comes judgment. This probably can become a talk of its own, but for example, this ultimately impacts your quality of decision making. For example, in my current role, I have to navigate a very complex organization. My users are sitting in globally distributed data centers, and then I have business partners who are sitting in Redmond. Users have opinions on how my products should work, how my processes should evolve. And our business partners here, they are in charge of defining the future vision of the processes and standards of the data centers. And when they don't align, I have to acutely observe and listen to the dynamics of the organization, take diverse perspectives, and then really synthesize this multiple points of views into a concrete product roadmap. And that requires judgment. And you will get better and better and better as you be more deliberate about it over time. And finally, it's about being staying curious. Depending, regardless of how much senior you get on your job, don't lose that growth mindset. Always try to be better tomorrow than you were yesterday. And that means have that coffee with your engineering partner, understand some of the technology challenges that they're experiencing, what are the technologies that they're using, what's coming next. Have a coffee with your salesperson, have a coffee with your operations person, understand what are the process hurdles they're dealing with. What is the struggle in the marketing department in terms of messaging and positioning. That's what I mean by competency. So if you think about these 4-5 elements, I think they will serve you well. Empathy. All right, so what is empathy? Empathy, like I said before, it's really your ability to get into the other person's head and see the world from their perspective. It is not about making somebody happy or being nice. That's a very common pitfall, right? To me, empathy is really another data gathering tool that I can leverage as a product manager to communicate effectively and to make more high quality decisions. That's how we all should look at empathy. And we often talk about empathy for customers. Do not forget your stakeholders. We need empathy for a variety of people because of the cross-functional nature of our role. So let's talk about customer empathy and why is this important? At the end of the day, we are all technologists, and our job is to meet those unmet and unarticulated customer needs. And it all starts by getting out of the building. In my current job, for example, like I said before, we have our users who are sitting in the data centers, globally distributed, and we spend a lot of time going there, talking to them, understanding them, observing them, and not just how they're using my products or tools, but what does the day-to-day look like? What are the challenges, frustration? And when you observe them, when you spend the time, when you interview them, when you get to know them, you will see that you're getting insights that you would have otherwise not got. For example, we are learning that the biggest frustration is not necessarily a lack of feature of my tool, is that they're having to use so many different tools to complete their workflows. So one of the things that we are thinking about in my current program is how do you really build a more integrated, connected technology ecosystem, right? And sometimes, there are simple things that you can do that have huge impact. For example, build just simple better linking across the different tools, so they don't have to copy paste things. It's just more seamless that way. So I want to share a story with you guys on customer empathy, and this is when I was working at AI2 on Semantic Scholar. On how we kind of used the framework in the previous slide, getting out of the building, turning insights into actions, and build, rinse, repeat, and made a really awesome product. So at AI2, we had a hypothesis that we could make scientific search much more efficient. And when I say scientific search, I'm talking about how do you navigate and research, research papers, right? And so we had this hypothesis. What we started doing was we started engaging with a lot of researchers. I would go and spend time in University of Washington. We would invite various researchers, students, professors to come and visit us for focus groups. And there were two key insights that we found out. One is when researchers are researching a topic like language model, for example, they will go into a search engine and issue the query. Here, as you see, they're getting 4 million plus results. And then they start clicking on each of these results, the top results. And they will click on a result. They will go to the landing page, which is basically the research paper itself. On an average, they spend around 8 to 10 minutes to skim through that paper first time, only to make a decision that should I be following up on this paper at a later time or not? Number one. And number two is when they're doing it, they're always looking for a consistent set of information. They're looking for the abstract. They're looking for citations, references, some key tables, graphs, and charts, what are the top keywords in the paper, and so on and so forth. And it took for us some time to figure this out, but that was kind of an aha moment. And we said that, all right, so here could be an idea that if we could summarize this paper by extracting these information intelligently using our expertise in AI, then we have a potential to significantly boost research productivity. We wanted to cut down that time from 8 to 10 minutes to something lower. And that's exactly what we did. So after a lot of rinse and repeat and some concepts, design mocks and everything that we continue to sort of iterate with them, we eventually shipped this experience. So if you go to our competitor, which was Google Scholar, they would, on a click of the search results, you go to the paper. We take them to a landing page, which was our custom research paper summarized landing page. And what you see here is we have extracted the citations, the abstract, some of the key figures, tables, and topics from the paper, and everything. And all of a sudden, when you do that, you have reduced that time to first skim from 8 to 10 minutes to around 2 to 3 minutes. Now think about the amount of research productivity globally that we have made an impact towards, right? And that wouldn't have been possible unless you go and build that empathy with these researchers and really understand how they do, why they do what they do. So hopefully you get a sense of what customer empathy really means. The other part of empathy is, empathy with your internal stakeholders. Like I said, it's a very cross-functional role, and there's various challenges that you will experience. You will have sometimes misalignment on vision. Maybe the back-end team and the front-end team in a big organization are trying to deliver something together, but they don't see the product vision and product positioning the same way. There's genuine differences in leadership style, personality differences. People don't get along well, cannot work well together. There's escalations, missed deadlines. There's challenges in execution. And PMs who lead with empathy, who really understand, take the time, build relationships, they become the connective tissues and force multipliers in the organizations. Especially in large organizations, this kind of a skill, pays huge dividends. So I'm going to share three things that I feel we as product managers should pay particular attention to when we are talking about stakeholder management. The first one is building trusted relationships. In my current role, I was saying earlier, that I have to navigate a very complex organization, complex dynamics. So I have sort of identified a set of stakeholders who have meaningful influence on my product and product roadmap or program roadmap. And I meet with these people, some weekly, some monthly, some bi-weekly, quarterly, but I have a regular cadence going on with them where I'm discussing what's top of their minds. I'm sharing what's top of my mind. If there's something that I want to bring up that I need their help, this is a forum. But I sort of try to follow a 70-30 to 80-20 rule where most of the time I'm listening, right? And this is my opportunity to bring and learn the right things, and B, also to build that trusted relationship that, hey, here is a person who can at the very least be a sounding board, and we can share and we can work something together. Then comes managing conflicts, regardless of what type of products you work, which programs you're running, you will always run into this. My golden rule here is never respond to an email when you're angry or super frustrated. It's never thoughtful. Your response, you will always, more often than not, you will regret it. So manage your emotions when you're planning for going into a highly heated or potentially emotional or a contentious discussion. Take the time, half an hour, to prepare yourself, and validate your assumptions. Sometimes we get carried away. We think people are saying something to attack our teams or attack us personally. More often than not, that's not the case. So my approach is typically listen before you share your point of view, and that opens the door for an action plan, and it's typically much more constructive. And finally, escalation is not a bad thing. It's actually a very important strategic tool, right? Timing matters. You can sometimes be too late. You can sometimes be too early, and you will build that judgment over time. But a couple of things is escalation should never be a surprise, especially for the person who you're going to talk about. Ideally, you should be hips locked with them, and you should always have your facts, especially when you're presenting to executives. And across all these things, the key thing here is communication. You will work with different types of people, understand, observe how they speak, their language, how they perceive information, and adapt your style, communication style, to increase your effectiveness. All right, so that brings to authenticity. This is very important because we are talking about relationship building. We're talking about trust, and all of us want to work with people who operate with honesty and transparency and integrity. And these three pillars kind of touch into those different things. Really, first of all, it starts with internal reflection. You and your team. Be honest and transparent about where you really are. What are your strengths and weaknesses? Do you have risks? Do you have failures? Right? Never sugar. I mean, when you're talking to executives, one of the things that I tell all the time to my team members is communicate your risks earlier than later. Late surprises, people hate it. It reflects poorly on you because people feel that you don't have a control of your program or product. Right? So be honest and transparent, and embrace the red, and then show what are you doing about it. That's important, right? And if you have a certain weakness, if you're struggling in a specific area, be courageous enough to talk about that to your manager or to your peer and ask for help. You will have much better results that way. The other part is behaving with some level of integrity. I had one of my colleagues. We were going to jointly escalate about a specific issue, and we worked through the messaging to the end of the evening. We had written communication, which absolutely solidified. And then the next morning, when the executive asked a question, his response was completely something that we sort of did not agree on. And guess what happened to that relationship? Didn't go that well, right? So behave consistently. I mean, don't engage in any sort of talking about colleagues or gossiping about people and then showing a sweet face in front of them, right? So that's integrity. And finally, you will have to provide feedback. Whether if things are not going well, either from your team or for your counterparts, peers, engineering, operations, sales, you have to have the backbone to provide direct feedback, but do so without being a jerk. That's the hard part, right? So it's easy to sugarcoat. It's also super easy to be direct and be a jerk, but then that way you don't have a relationship. Try to be as constructive as possible. And that brings me to the last one, which is consistency. Trust takes time to build, and it's very, very, very easy to erode. So treat this as a marathon. It's a lifelong exercise. Trust is consistency over time. Whatever we have spoken today, I'm sure it's not all exhaustive, but consistency is really about doing all these things over and over and over again. That's how you build a track record, and people will trust you. That brings me to the last slide of my presentation. Just wanted to wrap up the key takeaways. Trust is your most essential capital as a product manager. It has 4 drivers. Competency is about getting the big picture, demonstrating ownership, run it like your own company, show strong judgment, have a strong point of view, and always be curious. Empathy is really about seeing the world through the other person's perspective. It's not about making people happy. So get out of the building, start listening, and communicate effectively. Authenticity is really about leading with integrity, honesty, and transparency. And finally, trust is consistency over time. Thank you for your time today. If you have any questions, you can contact me at nilojyoti@gmail.com. It was a pleasure talking to you guys. Thanks very much.